Greetings, Rothlings, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for Sunday, February 28th, 2021. This is as always, this is Q&A session time, so if you have any questions for me, make sure to tag my name in the chat. Just type rawspace or @rawspace. That way we're sure to see the questions, and I will get to them at the end of the broadcast. Okay, so looking at last week, let's start out with the Perseverance Mars rover. Since its historic landing on February 18th, it's been sending back thousands of images, videos, and data. Let's take a look at this incredible video of the rover's landing sequence. Now this is, now of course all a video is a sequence of images, and so this video is comprised of a sequence of images taken from the from multiple cameras on the descent engine, the lander, and well, let's just take a look. So I have to mute the sound for copyright reasons. Okay, so here we're looking up at the parachute deploying, and that's the hypersonic parachute, and there is the heat shield being jettisoned, the rover being dropped down from the descent engine on its cables, and then the Martian surface dust being blown all over the place, and then a view of the, okay, that was a really quick, let's go back and look at this in a little slower motion. All right, so now I haven't done an official like slow motion processing on this, but I will, I'm sure, get to that at some point. Okay, so parachute deploys, no issues. There's the heat shield jettisoning. And you see, if you would go back a sec, you see those coral snakes on the back surface of the heat shield. Those are cables that are routed, you know, sort of all over the place, connected to sensors and such. This is the rover being dropped on its sky crane from the descent engine. And okay, so here's a split view we have on the left, looking down from the descent engine onto the top of the rover, whose wheels are still folded up, so they have to sort of fold out those wheels for landing. And on the right, we see up from the top of the rover to the bottom of the descent engine. And there you see in the upper right corner of the descent engine, you see a couple of its thrusters. It doesn't look like they're producing any exhaust, but that's because the exhaust is clear. They are actually thrusting. You just can't see it because the exhaust is clear. And I don't remember the exact chemical reaction that's involved, but the exhaust is clear, so you don't see like a flame, you know, plume or smoke or anything like that. And the sort of the taut cables, if we look, so you see that 3 of the cables are taut, they're tight, they're not wiggling, and then there's one cable sort of unwinding and whipping all over the place. That's the data cable. So the taut cables are supporting the rover, and the wiggly cable is the transmitting the data between the rover and the descent engine. Because, bear in mind, once the rover touches down on Mars, the descent engine is cut loose, and you know, let me move this a little bit away. There, my levels are kind of high. Sorry if I'm screaming at you. The descent engine and the cables detach from the rover, and the descent engine loses its data connection to the rover. So all of the videos from the descent engine were transmitted from the descent engine, or the sky crane if you want to call it that, down through that cable to the rover, and after they separate, after the descent engine has separated from the rover and then boosts off to crash a short distance away, there's no more data transfer. So all the video we have from the descent engine was transmitted through that cable that we see. And then here, this is just amazing. All right, that was a very brief look at that dust swirling around. And so one side benefit of this propulsive landing process is that it serves to scour away some of that surface dust, which exposes some rocks for analysis, for scientific analysis. You know, because we don't have air dusters or, you know, dust off canisters on the rover. It has ways of cleaning rocks and things like that for sample extraction or whatever, but nothing like the thrust from a descent engine. And so once it gets, so this is the view from the rover looking up at the descent engine as the descent engine is about to detach and depart. And there's dust blowing all over the place, so you can't see much, but then boop, it cuts free and the descent engine flies away, and people cheer. So congratulations. It's still, I know this was like more than a week ago, but that's a new sort of view of the landing. Very incredible. So they also released a few days ago the first panoramic view of the landing site. If we want to, so let's see, how close can we get here? So this is very high resolution. My gosh, look at that. This is a very high resolution panorama. You see all these pits on the rocks. Interesting. Huge rover wheel. Oh, we can see where the photos were stitched together there. So the rover, this is the Mastcam. This is the first Mastcam Panorama. So the rovers, they deployed the mast, and that has these stereographic cameras on it that take pictures in much higher resolution than we've had before. And so this is the landing site. It's able to take pictures with at very wide angles, and so it's able to see itself. The rover can take selfies by stitching together multiple images. I wonder, I'm seeing these swirls here. I'm wondering if these swirls were a result of the landing. They look so like this rock looks kind of blasted by the landing. That doesn't look like a natural, you know, like the rock is more exposed than I would expect it to be. Anyway, wanted to show you that. They also released an audio file. Now it's really quiet, so I'm gonna, you know what, Opera audio, you know what, let me increase the gain of this audio for you real quick. And let's listen to the sound of a microphone capturing the wind on Mars. Now, bear in mind, the microphone, there was an issue with the microphone during descent. They were hoping to capture the audio of the descent, the EDL, the entry, descent, and landing sequence. But unfortunately, there was an issue, and they did not capture the sound from the descent. But this is on the surface of Mars. So let's check this out. And you know what? Let me play that again with a little bit less gain, because that looked like it might have been distorted a little bit. So let's check this out again. So what you're hearing is, you know, out of context, it wouldn't seem terribly interesting. It just sounds like a light wind blowing across a microphone. But what you're hearing is actual wind in the thin carbon dioxide atmosphere of Mars for the first time ever. It's amazing. Now, I wanted to point out, so if you want to keep up with the Mars 2020 mission and the progress of the Perseverance rover, go to mars.nasa.gov/Mars2020, and you will find everything they have released. You know, not just the articles, which are, you know, occasional releases, but also if you go to, you can either go, I mean, follow the link to you know, images here, or you can go to multimedia images or raw images, raw images. Yeah, and so this is Mars Perseverance raw images, 6,024 images. And so here you can browse the ever-growing and huge archive of images directly from Mars that so hazard avoidance cameras, let's say, so there's 121 pages, newest to oldest. Okay, so these are new images. Let's find, I don't know, let's look at these rocks here. Download image. Oop. It opened elsewhere. Let me. I don't know where it went. What in the world? Didn't go in my downloads folder. Okay, whatever. Oh, here it is. Okay. Whoop. So there. So we see this looks a little, is this 100%? Yeah. So it looks a little pixelized or grainy, but it's raw. So now if we go back and to not raw images but images, these are going to be the processed images. Launch operations, land, best of perseverance. That sounds good. Crater rim, a wind carved rock. So these are going to be curated, processed, color corrected, and that's cool. Look at that. That's a pointy rock sticking up from the surface. And captions. So these are going to have explanations, which are useful. And this is the rim of Jezero crater. Off in the distance. Short distance. Couple kilometers. Actually, the rim of the crater may be more than a couple kilometers. I think it's the edge of the escarpment at the river delta, the ancient river delta, that is like 1.5 to 2 kilometers away. But anyway, I wanted to direct you to that site because it's really neat to be able to follow these missions in near real time, and especially with the raw images, you know, and other media types. I mean, you're able to see what, you know, what media is coming back from Mars even quicker than if you're following the you know, occasional like broadcasts or whatever. So moving on. Last Tuesday, a Chinese Long March 4C rocket launched the third group of 3 Yaogan 31 reconnaissance satellites from remote Zhuquan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert. Making sure to remove my volume boost there. Let's check that out. Oh, well, there doesn't seem to be any audio coming through. Why is that? So, sorry for that. Technical difficulties. Let me figure out what's going on. All right, so yeah, I think what happened is that Windows screwed me over again, and Windows likes to change the audio output from my browser like randomly. I think this is a case where I was literally in the middle of a broadcast, and Windows just changed the audio output from the browser. So let's yeah, let's try again. And there you have it with audio. Then last night, India's space agency ISRO launched a PSLV rocket, which stands for Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, with Amazonia 1, the first Earth observation satellite to be developed entirely by Brazil. Let's check out the launch.
My 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. Press 5 seconds.
Majestic liftoff and the announcement of normal liftoff from the Range Operations Director.
सफलतापूर्वक उत्थापन PSLV C-51 का अपने मिशन की ओर अग्रसर.
Sorry for the background whine. So yeah, the broadcast was a bit of a mess. Even though Doordarshan, which is the pseudo government broadcast agency of India, is the official broadcaster of ISRO launches, and they love to plaster their watermark all over the videos. They do not actually own exclusive copyright on those launch footage, because that's a product of the Indian Space Agency. But they seem to have audio issues. The levels were all over the place. They had the background whine that was in the way. But anyway, so from a polar sun-synchronous orbital altitude of 752 kilometers, Amazonia 1 will keep an eye on the Amazon rainforest, monitoring the process of deforestation, mostly for agriculture and cattle farming, that has already destroyed 20% of the areas that were already officially designated as protected. Amazonia 1 will operate jointly with the China-Brazil Earth Resources Satellite 4, also called CBERS 4, Ziyuan 104, or Ziyuan 1E. It's a very... it has a lot of names. That was launched by China back in December 2019. With near real-time coverage, Brazil will be able to dispatch enforcement teams to go deal with new areas of illegal clear-cutting and burning, which, of course, we understand is having a severe impact on the lungs of our planet, the Amazon rainforest. So Amazonia 1's development began way back in 2008, 13 years ago. The project cost Brazil about 360 million real, or 60 million US dollars, about 1/6 of what it would have cost to import ready-to-use equipment. So they saved a lot of money by developing it internally. Amazonia 1 is only the first of 3 Amazon monitoring satellites that INPE, the Brazilian Space Institute, plans to build using the same manufacturing platform. Then, starting a few hours after the ISRO launch, early this morning, was a spacewalk with astronauts Kate Rubins and Victor Glover to prepare the space station for upcoming solar array upgrades. Unfortunately, I completely flaked on the live stream and slept right through it, because I was up rather late the night before for the ISRO launch, and I've been very sleep-deprived lately anyway. And I forgot to set my alarm. So deepest apologies for that. But immediately after Space Week, shortly, I will need to go look at some houses. So I won't be able to do anything right away, but later tonight I'll upload the spacewalk video for you to see, or you can check it out on NASA's channel. Let's see. Moving ahead to this week. And by the way, this video we're looking at is from the spacewalk earlier, and is sped up about 2 times. So that's why the movement looks a little frenetic. Not phonetic, frenetic. So looking ahead to this week, tonight, Sunday, February 28th at 8:37 p.m. Eastern, 01:37 GMT, SpaceX finally launches their Starlink 17 mission that's been delayed multiple times since the beginning of February, getting pushed past the launches of Starlinks 18 and 19, meaning 17 will be launching after both of those other missions. The reason for the delays is not entirely clear, to me anyways. Maybe they'll mention it during the broadcast, since SpaceX tends to be fairly open about such things. And I'll have a live stream of that for you here on Raw Space tonight. unless it gets delayed again. This Falcon 9 booster has flown on 7 missions previously. Iridium 8, Telstar 18 Vantage, both of which I think were streamed right here, and 5 Starlinks. One half of the payload fairing flew on 3 previous Starlink missions, and the other half flew on 2 Starlink missions. So we have the booster and 2 different payload fairing halves that have all flown on different missions. Once in orbit, there will be approximately 1,141 Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth. By comparison, the next most populous satellite constellation is that of Planet Labs, which operates over 200 smallsats. And Starlink are not smallsats, they're bigger than that. Overall, Starlink comprises almost 1/6 of the roughly 6,000 satellites that orbit the Earth. Of those 6,000, only about 56% are still operational, though. So that means that Starlink actually represents about 1/3 of the operational satellites in existence, which is kind of mind-blowing. A few weeks ago, Starlink started accepting down payments from prospective customers on a first-come, first-served basis. So you have to pay for, this basically, you're paying for the first month of service as a down payment. The equipment cost is something like $500. Each month it's like $90 or $99 or something like that. So a little expensive if you're strapped for cash, but still quite reasonable in comparison with some other services like television or internet service that you might have, broadband internet. Anyway, they estimate service will be available in my area here in North Carolina later this year, so fingers crossed for that. Now, Starlink is primarily intended to provide service to underserved areas, out in the countryside where there's either no or very bad data connections, countries where they don't have the infrastructure, to support ground-based data transmission at any kind of respectable speeds or at all, remote areas that are completely disconnected. But hopefully city slickers, quote-unquote, such as myself, will have some access to it, because it's a wonderful thing. It's an amazing service that I really want to be a part of. I could have been a part of the development team working on back-end software for the Starlink project, but there were some issues with the interview process about 3 years ago when I applied, and we weren't able to actually conduct the interview, so I had to move on to a local job opportunity. But I could have been there. I could have been a contender. Then, moving on, the SpaceX Starship SN10 high altitude test might be happening sometime tomorrow, Monday, March 1st, through Wednesday, March 3rd, between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern, or 3 p.m. and 12 a.m. GMT. As we know, the dates and times for these tests are very fluid, and so we have to be prepared to wait a little longer if they get delayed. But if we look at the road closures for Cameron County, there are closures for March 1st and March 2nd, Monday and Tuesday. And those extend from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I presume that that's Central Time, because they are in Central Time Zone, which means that that would be 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. Then there are FAA TFRs, or temporary flight restrictions. Highlight these. From Monday through Wednesday, from 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So if we intersect the road closures and the TFR schedules, we get a launch window of between 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern, or 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. GMT, because there has to be a road closure and there has to be a TFR in order for them to launch. Interestingly, there's also a TFR in my home state of Oregon today, up to an altitude of 25,000 feet. The Oregon Rocketry Club will be launching a Class 2 high-power, so-called high-power amateur rocket. Here's an example of what those look like. So that's pretty cool. I just noticed that and I was like, Oregon? Really? Do we even have rockets in Oregon? Then this Friday, March 5th, starting at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 10:30 GMT, is a spacewalk with astronauts Kate Rubins and Soichi Noguchi to mark his return to from the last time he walked in space years ago to work on space station upgrades. And that's actually it for this week. Just one orbital launch, the Starlink tonight. We've entered another fairly quiet period as far as rocket launches go. Now to get to your questions. First of all, thanks very much to Chris V for summarizing these questions for me. Okay, Ian Pedlar. I'm going to ask a silly question right now. Do you think the fact that SN10 will not exist has anything to do with superstition? Well, I do not personally have any knowledge of the lack of an SN10 serial number for Starlink prototypes, Starship prototypes. But I think that the superstition could be a factor. I mean, that's pretty silly, but I mean, we've discussed in the past, or rather I have monologued in the past about how superstitious humans tend to be and why I think that is. So even though 13 is just a number and it doesn't mean a darn thing, people will still attribute characteristics to numbers, and that can pollute or cloud their perceptions. So could be, but ultimately I don't have a fly on the wall of the SpaceX headquarters or whatever. I don't hear their discussions of test article naming conventions. Crystallina Bacteria. First, she asked, did Ra cover the spacewalk, and then why did you sleep through the spacewalk? I slept through the spacewalk because I was tired, and I forgot to set my alarm. So sometimes, there are launches in the middle of the night, and I'll have my sleep schedule tightly controlled. I'll go to bed early, and then I'll wake up to start the stream, and then go to sleep, and wake up for the end of the stream, and then go back to sleep again or whatever. But this time, I was tired. My brain was not where it should be, and I just completely forgot to set an alarm. So, again, deepest apologies. Chris V has a question. Can you tell us about the sundial/color wheel object on Perseverance? Yeah, let me pull up a picture of that. So Selfie. Perseverance. You know what? All right. No. Mars rovers. All right. Well, I'll go to the Mars 2020 site, mars.nasa.gov/Mars 2020, because in here, I'll show you what I'm doing. There's got to be a picture of it. I'm just having trouble finding Well, you know what? Phooey. I'll show you an old sundial because I think it looks roughly the same. So here we have a picture of so this is from 2002, but the sundial looks roughly the same. It's a stick with a ball on it. There's a circle. There's some colors and markings. But yes, the Mars exploration rovers, and probably also Curiosity, though I don't specifically know for that one, have all had sundials on them, which not only allow them to gauge the time, but also that white background allows them to that white background allows them to there he is, Ben who's making biscuits, gauge the level of, I guess, dust deposition on the rover, because it's a nice neutral color, that white, and so they can gauge how much dust has been deposited on the rover, which isn't an issue for power generation, because as we know, the Perseverance rover is powered by an RTG battery, or an RTG power source, radioisotope thermoelectric generator, rather than solar panels. But nonetheless, that's another purpose that this thing can be used for. Sam Volashek. There is a 360 4K panorama available too. Yes, I think that image that we saw was made into a 4K panoramic like VR video that you can view. I didn't in my preparation for SpaceWeek, I didn't find the link to that, but I believe it is out there. Sam Balashek, did you hear that Victor Glover's glove ripped today? I did not hear that. I hadn't heard anything about the spacewalk because I was asleep, and then I was preparing for SpaceWeek. So that's definitely something that can happen, and that's why during spacewalks they do frequent what they call glove and hap checks, which are the hap is the helmet absorption pad, which goes behind the astronaut's head and absorbs water that might leak into the helmet, so that we don't have situations like what happened with Luca Parmitano a few years back. Was it 20 whatever it was? It was 2013, 14, I don't remember. But Luca Parmitano, the ESA astronaut, had a coolant water leak into his helmet, and which caused a real problem, because in zero gravity water just globs onto everything, and it can suffocate you or blind you, and so that was a bit of an emergency they had, but they got him out of his suit and fixed up. But as far as Victor Glover's glove, yeah, so I'll have to read up on that, because that's interesting. Thanks for letting me know. But there's a lot of things on the ISS that can rip your suit, and even though the suits are quite durable and they're made of many layers of material, so chances are, I mean, I'm guessing that if something on Victor's glove ripped, it was only the outer layer, because there are multiple layers to the suits for that very reason, to protect the astronaut, so that a single tear doesn't like end the mission or whatever. But anyway, Rockin' Robbins 13, what was today's spacewalk about? Was it Russian? Explaining why nobody but NASA was streaming it. No, this was a U.S. spacewalk with U.S. astronauts Kate Rubins and Victor Glover, preparing the ISS for solar array upgrades, which I don't know specifically what that will involve, but I should, because NASA had a like an upcoming spacewalk briefing they had like an upcoming spacewalk briefing a couple days ago, and I missed it because I've just been super busy, and like I'm trying to sell my house, and find a new house, and issues with work, etc., etc. So I missed that. But yes, today's spacewalk was a U.S. spacewalk. All right, now. Okay, back to the live. Ooh. Did we have a lag? What happened there? So it looked to me like my video was frozen, and I saw somebody mentioning that the broadcast was cutting off. So if there was a glitch in the YouTube streaming, I apologize. Okay. Yeah, I've been having some weird YouTube behavior. So if it's laggy, I'm sorry for that. Hopefully it at least uploads to YouTube okay, so that we can have the video after the fact. All right, scanning real quick for additional questions. All right. So let me check my notes, make sure I don't have anything extra. That looks like it'll be it for this week. So thank you all for coming. Sorry if I'm tired, but I'm tired. Hopefully next week I'll be able to get some better rest. But until then, keep it raw. I hope to see you tonight at the Starlink launch, and again whenever SN10 launches. And I promise that I will try not to miss this Friday's spacewalk. So do take care, and I will leave you with, I'll leave you with some views of Captain Bennu. All right, bye for now.